Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News. We continue our special coverage of the Israel-Iran conflict. After 11 days of strikes, tensions peaked when Iran hit Al-Udeida air base in Qatar. That was yesterday, America's largest base in the region. The attack disrupted airspace and triggered calls for calm. Hours later, the US announced a ceasefire, one that's already been breached. So will Iran and Israel comply? More analysis coming up next. Now, US President Donald Trump expressed frustration with both Israel and Iran, accusing them of violating the ceasefire he announced just hours after Iran struck Al-Udeida air base in Qatar. Speaking to reporters before departing for the NATO Summit in The Hague, he said he was unhappy with both countries. They don't have any clue what they are doing. Let's listen to his remarks.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
With me in the studio today is Dr. Mahmoud Abdul Karim, economic and financial researcher. We are just waiting on an interview. Benny Gantz will be joining us, the former Israeli Minister of Defense and chairman of the Unity Party. But ahead of that, what did you make of Donald Trump's comments? And it's been a really volatile 12 hours. And how have the markets reacted?
Actually, against all the expectations, because, you know, the risk of the oil market remain uncertain, okay? But then after like a bit increase in the price, the price pulled back to like a level between we're talking about trading crude Brent between in the range of 76 to 78. Although like earlier in a week it was like reached like $76, okay? So that's the risk of that one, okay, still exists of that one. That the reacted, it was not as per like you know, the impact of what happened exactly of the strike. In addition to that, the fear, okay, mainly if we're looking at that, the fear of, you know, closing right now, if we're looking at that, because the closing the Strait Hormuz, okay, that's a really big fear for most, like, you know, countries, and specifically trader and investor all around the world, because you're talking right now about almost 20% of the total oil traded, the oil, you know, traded around the world, so globally. So that will affect definitely the oil price. However, you know, investors look at that from the perspective, it's, they don't look at that as a really has a big impact on the price, because they thought from the perspective it's just a strike and this is a finish and life would continue and the cycle of that, you know, going price, the strike finish, and they will continue like trading as a normal, you know, trader. That's the reason. So other aspect or other things that might affect the price, you know, more, you know, more damage way. Like for instance, maybe like, you know, bombarding some kind of, you know, oil tank that will affect the oil price.
Do you think that there's still a risk of that happening in the Strait of Hormuz? Because we've seen the Houthis do it before. Or do you think that's something we've called for a ceasefire now? Donald Trump and Israel and Iran appear to have agreed to that. So is it something that investors maybe should still be concerned about?
I don't think so, but if you think about it from the GCC perspective now, they should consider it, how just to protect that, that part, that area exactly, and how just to find the solution, how to weigh, how just to protect that area against any, closing or partially closing that area, because that will stop, all the oil trading and through that, channel, or let's say what they call it, that, as a water sea, that what they call it.
Well, I'm just going to have to stop you there, but thank you so much for that analysis. I will be back with you later on the show. Right now, we're going to be joined by Benny Gantz, former Israeli Minister of Defense and Chairman of the National Unity Party. Benny Gantz, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to join me this evening. Donald Trump is clearly furious as he rages...
Thank you for having me, and I'll be very happy if you would slow down a bit. After all, I'm Israeli, and it takes some time to understand English.
Yes, of course, no problem at all. Thank you for telling me. So,
Thank you.
No worries. Benny, Donald Trump is clearly furious as he rages at Israel and Iran for violating the ceasefire. He said, "I've got to get Israel to calm down." What do you make of that?
Well, first, it's very important for us to emphasize the importance of the last 12 days campaign that we went through. Israel actually set out to stop the promoting of potential nuclear threat that would threaten us as Israelis, but would also threaten the entire region and the world. So I think it was very important for us to decide. I'm very... no one is looking for wars, but I think it was a very important event. I also want to convey my appreciation for President Trump for his historic decision to act strategically against the nuclear sites that the Americans have attacked. I've heard the president talking. Israel obviously obeyed the ceasefire until the Iranians broke out this morning around 10 o'clock our times. But I hope that the ceasefire will last, but even more so, I think it is very important to make sure that the Iranians are not going back to their ambitions and to make sure that this destabilizing potential of this region is not coming back.
Benny, the world is still in the dark about the terms of the ceasefire Israel and Iran has agreed to. Do you have any knowledge on what Israel has agreed to, and could this eventually lead to peace?
I don't know exactly what are the details. I think it's just a ceasefire as such. And I guess that the Iranians and the international community and the Americans will go back to their negotiation. It's very important to understand. We have nothing against the Iranian people. And we didn't initiate this campaign before we had to do it. So if no one wants us to go back to that kind of activities, the important is that it's going to be a very good agreement with full inspection and making sure that Iran cannot enrich uranium, it cannot go back to the nuclear track that it was on, it cannot continue to support all those militias around the world and to destabilize the entire area. That's what should be in this agreement, but let's see what comes up next.
Okay, so we still don't have any more details on the agreement. Israel said it held back on Iran and on an attack, and that was after speaking to Trump earlier today. Is Donald Trump the only world leader who has leverage over Netanyahu to stop this conflict? Or is Netanyahu determined to carry on regardless of what Donald Trump says?
The way I see it, Israel agreed to this ceasefire. And I want to be very clear. You know, I might be some kind of political opponent for Netanyahu. But on the issue of Iran here in Israel, there's no left or right. There's right or wrong. And I think we are right. And we don't want to go back to fight if we don't have to. We will go to fight and to act only if the Iranians will make us do so. So the important is to look not what Netanyahu is willing to listen or not. The important is to make sure that the Iranians are not moving forward with those kind of destabilizing and threatening activities. And if that's threatened up, if that's straight up and there's no such event from the Iranian side, everybody can sleep in comfortable.
The director of the nuclear watchdog warned Iran against undeclared nuclear transfer. Is Israel confident sites like Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan still have highly enriched uranium? Are you sure that that has gone? And if not, does Israel know where this enriched uranium is?
Of course, we will have to assess the outcome, the specific operational outcome of what we did in Iran. I think we pushed it back heavily and seriously years back, whether this is a knowledge within the scientists' minds or whether those are enrichment facilities, etc., etc. Iran went very close and tried to go across the threshold between enrichment and nuclear capacity. But another threshold was crossed during the last 2 weeks, is the willingness of acting. I'm saying Israel and later on joined by the United States, we showed our capabilities, but even more so, we show we're willing to act if needed. And once again, we have no intention of fighting Iran to exclude, to make sure it's not going back to this track. So I think that's very much important. So we can look at the achievement on the engineering perspective of it, on the tactical perspective of it, on the scientific perspective of it, but geopolitically and strategically, we need to understand that we went a very important threshold, and if we'll have to act again, we know how to do it. Unfortunately, people have seen it.
So Iran would argue that it was operating an entirely peaceful nuclear program for civilian purposes. We also know Tulsi Gabbard, who is part of the Chief of Intelligence in the US, said Iran wasn't close to making a nuclear bomb. And I just want to know if you still think the right decision for Netanyahu was to hit Iran.
Yes, I think it was a right decision. I think it was a strategic necessity for us from existential perspective, but it was very important decision on behalf of the region and on behalf of the world in terms of what Iran is presenting. We must understand that Iran is a global challenge, i.e. look at what's happening in Kiev, Ukraine. Look at what's happening with the Houthis in the Red Sea. Iran is a regional destabilizer. Before this war started, the highest number of rockets went on the Aramco facilities in Saudi back in 2019 by the Iranians. At the beginning of 2022, it went by the Houthis that are proxies of Iran to the United Arab Emirates. So it's not just an Israeli issue. So of course we have acted against a potential existential threat as we have done before in Iraq, as we have done before in Syria. This one was much more complicated, but we still could do it. The question is also stands there for the region. And you know, the only thing between a future of escalation and Israel reoperating if it has to do so, or a future of prosperity and stability, is the radical approach of the Iranians. If they won't go back there, we will see much more positive outcomes in the entire region. And we are favoring that. We are deep into the Abraham Accords, and I hope to see expansion of this to normalization with Saudi and other countries, and maybe to have some kind of agreement with the Syrians and the Lebanese governments. So we seek peace, we seek stability, we need security. So if we won't have to act, we definitely prefer the other tracks.
So I just want to speak to you about the scale of damage in Beersheba today. 4 people were killed and the damage is said to be extensive. What is the mood among people in Israel right now? And do they still support Netanyahu's attack on Iran, even though we have seen missiles hit inside of Israel?
Yes, Leigh-Ann, you're absolutely pointing out, without saying it, the difference between what we are doing and what the Iranians are doing. We are targeting operational and military and industrial facilities that had to do something with security, that has to do something with the nuclear approach, etc., etc. We may attack Revolutionary Guards, we may attack the Iranian Air Force. We do all kind of things that are military and operational targets. The Iranians are aiming to civilians, like we saw tragically this morning, as you rightly said, in Beersheba. However, the public of Israel understand the need to stand for our security interest, and we have the resilience to go through this process. I've been to all those places that were attacked, whether those are in the south or in the north, whether the people that were hurt were Jews or Arabs in the village of Tamra. We here in Israel are all united that Iran cannot and will not be allowed to threaten Israel and to threaten its very specific existence. I don't know of any other country in the world that calls for the total destruction of other country and building the means to do so. We have seen what happened on October 7. One cannot give those kind of capabilities to radicals that one day might irrationally use them. And I think that this is very well understood among the public in Israel.
So you resigned from Netanyahu's government amid the months-long assault on Gaza. Do you support Israel's attacks on Iran? And I just want to say to you, according to official figures, around 606 civilians have died in Iran since the 13th of June, since Israel launched their attacks on the country.
Yes, but I'm very sorry for every civilian, Iranian civilian that was killed. Just as I'm very sorry for every citizen in Gaza who is being killed. But this is not because we are seeking to kill civilians. This is because we have to go after military or operational targets, and those are embedded into civilian society, and that's the results of what happened, unfortunately, in Gaza. You know, if you talk about damages, surrounding damages in military operations around the world, Israel is achieving the highest ratio, I would say, of kind of 1-to-1, but which professionally speaking considered to be a good operational ratio. But once again, I'm very, very sorry for every loss of life which is unnecessary. We could take all those tons of dollars that went to terror organizations, that went to build those nuclear sites, that went to build those ballistic missiles that threatened the entire continent of, or half at least continent of Europe, and invest them in science, in education, in health system. I think the Iranian people themselves should be getting those kind of things much more than the attempts that the Iranian regime have done outside the Iran itself. So yes, I'm very sorry for every civilian who's being killed, and but if it comes to a point where we have to act, then we have to act.
Did Prime Minister Netanyahu carry out this mission to destroy Iran military sites and nuclear capabilities to make sure he stayed in power? Before these attacks, he was facing immense pressure from Western allies over the dire humanitarian crisis inside of Gaza. And every day, there are reports that people who are going to receive aid are being killed at those facilities.
We cannot afford to stop fighting against Hamas in Gaza, nor we should stop supplying food for the people of Gaza as much as we can. Unfortunately, during the campaign in Gaza, we saw that Hamas is taking control over the humanitarian support that is being pushed inside, keeping it in his own storage, and selling it to the society, to civilians in ridiculous high prices. So we are seeking always way to buffer between Hamas control of the humanitarian support and making sure that the people of Gaza actually gets them. So I think that's what we should do in Gaza to continue. And you know, in Gaza, we are not revenging because there's nothing that we can do in Gaza to satisfy our revengement sense after what they did to us on October 7. Nor are we retaliating in Gaza. All we do in Gaza is securing our future over there, from there. And I hope that one day will come that we can build in Gaza something that the Palestinian can live with and we can live beside. I tell you first-hand knowledge. How many peace people of the kibbutzim around Gaza were murdered. And those people were part of what we call here in Israel the peace camp. They took Palestinian patients to Israeli hospitals on a daily basis. They were murdered on October 7. They were about to build an industrial zone for 10,000 workers from Gaza to work in Israel, and he was murdered. That was my friend, the head of the regional municipality of Phil Lipstein, God bless his soul. And those people were murdered. So we cannot afford for that to happen. Hamas controlled and threatened us and attacked us ever since they took control since 2007. Iran were supporting this Hamas group or Hezbollah in Lebanon or other militias in Syria and Iraq since they took control of Iran at the end of the 70s. And those two activities must come to their end in order to promote stability in the region.
So, Benny, I hear you there, and I have spoken to a lot of doctors who are operating in Gaza, and they have said to me that there's malnutrition, people are starving, not enough food is getting to them, and when people are being injured at these aid distribution sites, they have shots in their shoulders, and it is not warning shots. People are dying every single day of starvation. Do you think if the war with Iran is indeed over, attention is now going to refocus on the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, and also that Benjamin Netanyahu has failed to get the hostages back?
Well, we got lots of hostages back. It started with 251 of them, and now we have 50 more in Gaza. So I think we have done a lot, but it's very, very simple. Between rebuilding Gaza and to have a flood of humanitarian and rebuilding the place, there is very simple issues. Hamas must let down its arm. He cannot control Gaza. Our hostages must come back, and everybody will have whatever they need. We have no interest in Gaza other than that. So why to talk with us? Let's see what Hamas is doing.
Benny Gantz, former Israeli Minister of Defense and Chairman of the National Unity Party. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me, and I want to emphasize, we seek peace, stability and security in the region for all the people in the region, Jews, Arab, no matter where they come from. The only thing between us is radicals, whether those are Hamas or the other proxies of Iran and Iran itself. If those things will change, I think we are facing a bright future, and this region can really flourish in all aspects that one can think of, and I hope that one day we'll get there. I believe that one day we will get there, and I'll do whatever I can in my capacity to promote this direction in future days.
Benny Gantz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, following the announcement of the ceasefire between Iran and Israel, several residents in Tehran expressed deep concern about whether or not the truce will last. Let's hear what they have been saying.
Well, during times of war, everyone suffers economically, and that is to be expected. However, I don't believe we should be focusing on such matters right now. Our priority must be the aggression committed against our beloved country, and we must respond.
I don't think a ceasefire is sustainable. It simply isn't. I believe the blows that Israel and the United States have suffered will lead them to seek retaliation, and they are likely to attack again.
All Western countries have been exposed. They lied to the people of Iran, pretending to offer time for negotiations, only to attack from the other side. They targeted our infrastructure, even though they were the ones who suffered most, while we remained largely unharmed.
For more on this, I'm joined by Sima Sabet, a British-Iranian journalist and host of the Sima Sabet show. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time to join me. It has been nearly 2 weeks since Israel first launched missile strikes on Iran. Were these attacks necessary? And what more can you tell us about the people and what they are facing in Iran?
Well, to be honest, I blame Islamic Republic that they brought this war into our homeland. This is the main thing that everyone has to pay attention when they are talking about this war. The stance that Islamic Republic had on its nuclear advancement, on nuclear ambitions, on the missile programs that they were trying to develop, the instabilities that they had in the region through their proxies, they're all factors that finally brought this war upon us. So the main responsibility goes to the Islamic Republic, but anyone else. They are the one who attracted this war. And on the other side, unfortunately, there are some civilians and casualties which came with it. Of course, I mean, innocent people are the ones who they pay a heavy price during the war. One of the main results of this one was that IRGC is now weaker than ever. Many of their top commanders are taken off. They're killed. And this is the result that no one could expect to see in a lifetime if it wasn't happening during the war. So the targets on the very first night took the main chain of command of IRGC, which they are the main responsibility. They have the main responsibility for firing the missiles, for advancing the nuclear bomb, etc., etc. These ambitions are not Iranians' ambitions. These are Iranian people, they don't want to have war with anyone. Iranian people, they don't have any war, any conflict with anyone in the region. They want to have good relationship, they want to have good economy, but they have been living in a miserable circumstances because of 2 decades of sanctions. But again, who brought these sanctions upon Iranians? It was the foreign policy that Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, and the government, and also the IRGC brought it into on our people. I think that these are the factors that when we are talking about a war, We have to realize that there has been reasons behind it. I remember the day that Grossi said that they cannot confirm the peacefulness of the nuclear advancement or nuclear activities of Iran. They announced that they're going to open another enrichment site, which is not announced. So this is a kind of, mocking the whole world, mocking the international community. What else did they expect? Everyone was worried about their nuclear. And now they don't have any nuclear. I don't know what they're going to negotiate over. They have to stop firing missiles. So this peace, like ceasefire, is going to last. But they started firing the missiles the moment after the ceasefire was announced. On the other side, I think Israelis also, they took their last chance in order to attack as many locations as possible that they could. And those locations were against IRGC sites, the police sites. One of the locations that was bombed, it was the location that they took Mahsa Amini to. It was called Wuzara. So, of course, it's at the heart of Tehran. But it's one of those locations that they took women there, the ones who they were not covered or had this Islamic dress code as the moral police wanted. So these have been a signal to people, and it has been very somehow significant in order to weaken the government's ability to suppress any kind of uprising or any reactions by the people. On the other side, I could hear people talking about how Iran was great, how they acted great. We have to know that inside Iran, many people are threatened to take a stance against Israel and to condemn the war, and also in order to make sure that they are praising Islamic Republic for that. So I'm not surprised if those people inside Iran, they are somehow saying it under pressure. There has been checkpoints inside Iran. The prisoners have been threatened to executions. They restarted executions again during the last few days, and then internet has been shut down, so people could not communicate with their families. Still, internet is very limited inside Iran. So there are laws going on under the skin of the society without anyone signaling it really, in a way that it is to the outside world. People have no voice because there is one government who has been suppressing them during the last 46 years. And then there another factor of war, which they have been living during the last few days under the bombings. So, yes, this is the real story that people are living under.
Sima, thank you so much for your insights into that. But I just want to ask you briefly before I let you go. There was a terrifying plot to kill you and your colleague while both of you were working for an Iranian news channel based in London. Since these recent attacks, how do you feel? Do you feel safe within the UK as the threat has increased?
Well, no, I don't feel safe because the IRGC's agents, they're everywhere. They have been threatening journalists, they have been threatening many dissidents outside of Iran, at the heart of Europe, at the heart of UK, anywhere. It's not only me. My story came up because there was credible evidence of what they were doing. I'm lucky to be alive because one of the people involved was a double agent. If that wasn't the case, I have been killed a long time ago. My only sin was that I was presenting a show which was extremely popular. And of course, we were exposing what is happening inside Iran in terms of human rights, in terms of the political activities of the government. So yes, and at the moment, I know that there is another presenter whose her family have been taken hostage by the Islamic Republic. Her mother, her father, and her brother have been taken away from their home, and the father was forced to call her and say that resign from your job. And the fact that IRGC is violating many of the European countries' integrity, sovereignty, there is absolutely no respect for them, for the international law, let's say. But now when they are in danger, they're seeking international support, they're talking about the international orders, etc., etc. But this is not what we have been seeing from Iran during the last 4 decades when they came to power. So anytime that they can use the international norms and orders and regulations, they use it. But in the meantime, a journalist at the heart of London has to be targeted just because exposing or saying the news as it is.
Sima Sabet, British-Iranian journalist and host of Sima Sabet Show. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Dr. Mahmoud Abdul Karim, who was listening to that, is still with me in the studio. I went through 2 long interviews there. Apologies, but we are back with you. I just wanted to pick up on something our last guest was saying, Sima, when she was talking about the state within Tehran at the moment and what people are going through and the economy. I found this fascinating that Iran's annual GDP is around $418 billion, and that is with a country that has 94 million people. Why is GDP so low in such a big country?
Simply because of sanctions, okay? And also because the huge restrictions that they're putting on sanction. And as that's well known that for everyone that Iran, under the blacklist. So in the sense that they cannot export or import anything, even the 1.4 million barrel of oil that they sell in daily basis, they sell it at discounted prices. So, some, like estimation, they say like 50% discount of the market price. Some other estimation, they say 60%. And all this goes to where? To China. So they get to sell. So they're not really getting. And in terms of a country that has any core or a core substance of economy that or something can generate income for that, they don't have anything because they're not allowed to use or import any raw materials that allow them to be involved in the production and to have an economic cycle which increase the GDP.
So what is the answer now for Iran? Because they said that they were enriching uranium and that was for civilian purposes. It was for that use. Now we are hearing that these US and Israeli strikes has obliterated those enrichment facilities. Where does this leave Iran in the way of power? What resources are now left in the country, and how does the country pick itself up again?
Mainly they rely on oil. They don't have anything else to rely, neither agriculture nor production.
So are things going to be harder now economically for the people?
If they don't lift the sanction on them, that will be so tough on them, okay? And that lifting the sanction, because it will go through a process. First of all, the peace talk. And you'll never know how long it will take also to reach the peace talk. After that, okay, the investigation. They will send some kind of people who would expert in for nuclear weapon, okay, to understand and also to look for any nuclear plan that they are, hidden or something like this, okay? So that will be a really long process. I think that they should, in the diplomatic way, they should just, request some, interfere by European Union to support them financially. And at least, okay, if not support them financially, directly support them through third party like Europe, like United Nations or UNDP or something else, okay? If you don't want to just give the Iran, okay, money, okay, because you're just afraid for the sake of proliferation, for anything that to develop a nuclear weapon, then you might have many channels that just to send money to them, okay? I'm specifically here send money to the Iranian people, not to the Iranian regime, because the Iranian regime, they are, as per what they are reading, okay, we are reading that we've been reading a lot, they are so rich, okay, especially you're talking about the president or all those people who are surrounding the working in government, they are so rich. But when it comes to the people, they are, they're suffering. They are most of the people, they're under the poverty level. Yeah. So at this end, okay, you want to support Iran? Okay, go there. Okay, try just to support them through like a proper channel, like UN. Just don't go there and just send money directly to them.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on the show. And I want to thank you once again, Dr. Mahmoud, for your insights and financial expertise.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, let's look at regional reactions to President Trump's ceasefire. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry welcomed the US-brokered truce between Israel and Iran, affirming its desire for de-escalation after 12 days of conflict, and thanking President Trump for his efforts. We can now speak to Ahmed Al-Ibrahim, political strategist and expert on regional security and also US-Saudi affairs. Ahmed, pleasure to have you on the show. Saudi Arabia has welcomed US President Trump's ceasefire. The agreement, however, it does appear fragile. How concerning is this for the Middle East region?
Thank you for having me, and my greetings to you and to the viewers. Definitely, you hit the nail on the point. The agreement is not even fragile. The agreement is just on the news. We need a solid agreement, define the role of Iran and Israel and how the treaty needs to be look alike, because we cannot afford in a 1 year time, 2 year time, maybe after Trump's time, another war will erupt in this region. So it's need to be redefined, it's need to be rewritten. And I think the way that we've seen the motto of President Trump today and his mood, that he is really willing to take this even further. And he is basically today has put himself in a same distance between Iran and Israel in his announcements, even when he didn't announce Israel by bombing Iran again, or by actually praising them because they actually stopped the conflict and they are stick to their guns right now. Also, he took it a step further by basically opening new markets to the United States. He mentioned that Iran is going to be a great trade partner in the future, and it's a good signal. It's a stability for us in the region, for Saudi Arabia, which is very ambitious, and they have Vision 2030 that it's been, promoting the whole peace in the region and zeroing all their, conflicts in the region. Again, it's need to be redefined, it's need to be re-stressed, and I think everybody needs to come on a roundtable meeting.
Ahmed, Qatar's Prime Minister has said relations with Iran have been scarred by the Iranian missile attack at the US airbase in Doha. Are other US bases in the Middle East now on high alert following that attack we saw this time yesterday?
The whole area is basically on alert. It's going to probably take a while, and all these kind of let's say alert codes goes down. Everything is possible. We're anticipating everything. I'm sure there's back channels has been taken, but there is some other stuff we did not understand as an observer, why Iran did hit the American base in Qatar, while Iraq is the traditional Ain al-Assad, it is the traditional base to hit, or it's closer than Qatar, they could have hit the Incirlik in Turkey. So there's a lot of things that we've seen, or the Fifth Fleet in the Arabian Gulf. So there's a lot of things that really to consider. and to see. But definitely, I think the relationship between Iran and Qatar, it is probably, they assess this is the easiest, probably country that they can have a back channel with. Qatar has been a promoter of peace and a mediator on the Iranian file on so many times. Probably there's a back channels over there, but still it's basically conquering the Qatari airspace, sovereignty, all of that. This is not going to be forgiven easy, not by Qatar or by the GCC, and it's really made a scar not only on Qatar, for the rest of GCC. I mean, the only allies was for Iran in this region was the GCC, especially Saudi Arabia, when they have this big, huge airspace that could have helped the United States to refuel their B-2s to bomb Iran. Prince Mohammed bin Salman has refused this to be happen because he doesn't want to be part of this conflict, and he wants to be the sound of wisdom to bring all parties to peace and stop the war. And yet Iran has actually fired their missiles into one of our GCC members, our neighbor, which is Qatar. And you know how the GCC is very sensitive when any other GCC country or members get into any under conflict. But I would like to reflect on your guest, Dr. Mahmoud and Sima. I feel the pain of the Iranian people. The only people who lost in this whole conflict are the Iranian people. They are struggling. As a Saudi national, as a human, as many of my colleagues here in Saudi Arabia, we feel very passionate to the Iranian people for all the killing that happened and the damages that happens to the Iranian people. And we hope for them that we see them one time coming to our region, share with us the economy, share with us our culture. We share with them their culture. We share with them their history. They share with us their history. It's been over decades and decades for the Iranian people. They've never expressed what life is all about, what the world looks like. I think maybe with all these things happening in the region, it's going to really define the role of the government and the regime of Iran to give more breather to the Iranian people, that we share a lot of values within this region. I hope the best for them, and I share all the pain with Sima and with Dr. Mahmoud.
Ahmed Al-Ibrahim, political strategist and expert on regional security and US-Saudi affairs. It was a pleasure to have you on and your insights. Thank you so much to sending your good wishes to the former guests. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we go to The Hague, where NATO leaders are meeting for a historic two-day summit to endorse a new defence spending plan that could see allies increase their spending by 5%. President Zelensky is urging NATO allies to invest in Ukraine's defence production and avoid any measures in favour of Russia. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Please increase your investments in Ukraine in joint weapons production. And all the weapons we produce become part of a new, stronger European defense and security system. European countries need to increase defense spending. We believe that 5% of GDP is the right level. And there is no significant Russian weapon today that is produced without components, without equipment or materials from other countries. Please, let's make sure that our defense potential and the potential of our partners works for our peace, not for Russia's madness.
We can now go live to Counterpoints host Melinda Nucifora, who is live from the NATO Summit at The Hague. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us. So we're expecting a meeting between Trump and Zelensky on the sidelines of the official leaders' dinner night. Has that been confirmed, and do we know anything more?
We know that the two leaders are going to meet. Exactly when it's going to happen, that's still open to some speculation at this stage. It's highly watched, this meeting, because let's not forget that President Trump scrapped a planned meeting with President Zelensky on the sidelines of the G7 meeting only a couple of weeks ago, when he decided to leave that summit early. So that's put even more emphasis on the meeting between these two leaders here at the sidelines of NATO. It's widely speculated that meeting will happen tonight at the official dinner hosted by the Dutch King, because interestingly, President Zelensky hasn't been invited to the leaders' working session on day 2. He is invited to the formal welcome dinner tonight, but not the official leaders' session. That really breaks with tradition over the past couple of years, because we have seen President Zelensky not only invited as a guest, but also invited to speak, to address the leaders at those working sessions at NATO over the past couple of years. There is some interpretation that perhaps that's a sign of Ukraine's faltering path to membership, something we know the US does not support. And it's also being reported that any reference to Ukraine's path to NATO membership is likely to be left out of the joint leaders' statement this year. Again, another break with tradition that we've seen over the past couple of NATO leaders' summits.
So, Melinda, President Trump posted a message exchange between himself and NATO chief Mark Rutte earlier. It was kind of highly unusual, wouldn't you say? There was a lot of praise in there.
I can tell you, Leigh-Ann, it had everyone in the media centre almost gasping when that came out. Everyone was looking around thinking, is this real? Did the US president actually post a private message from the NATO Secretary General? It is highly unusual. What is also has been raising some eyebrows amongst the media, amongst the analysts here, is the language that was used in that message. It was so glowing. The layers of praise were being heaped on thick and fast. We heard Mark Rutte saying things like, "Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important moment for America, Europe, and the world." He went on to say, "You will achieve something no American president in decades got done." He also praised President Trump's what he called decisive action on Iran, saying that was truly extraordinary. So glowing praise to the president, something I'm sure Mark Rutte expected to be kept private, but President Trump has decided to put it right out in the public view. We do know, though, that Mark Rutte is really well known for being a slick diplomat. If we cast our minds back to 2018, during that infamous NATO summit in Brussels, where it seemed like President Trump, during his first term, was almost going to derail the whole thing, when he said US could go it alone if NATO doesn't stump up on some extra funding. And it was Mark Rutte, then the leader of the Netherlands, who started shuttling between President Trump, between the Chancellor of Germany at the time, Angela Merkel, to try and smooth things over. In European circles, he's known as a bit of a Trump whisperer. So he obviously is trying to keep the president on side, because his joining of the summit tonight at the welcome dinner and at that working session tomorrow does have some European leaders on edge.
And Melinda, it's absolutely fascinating that we got that insight into the workings that happened behind the scenes on text message between Donald Trump and Rutte. So after all that excitement today, the scheduled events for day 1 of the summit are pretty much wrapping up. Do you think it's been a really successful start?
It's been quite an unusually slow start to the NATO summit, I would say. Again, a highly unusual NATO summit. This one here in The Hague is really going to go down as the summit that has broken with so many traditions. Usually, we see leaders sitting down for working groups across the various agenda topics that NATO spans over 2 days. And yet that's not happening this time around. Day 1 has been a very scaled back schedule. It's been only at ministerial level. It's been mainly dominated by ministerial sort of forums and talk fests, where they're getting various ministers and various academics together to discuss some of these NATO issues. It's not leader level working sessions. So that's been really unusual. again, there has been some speculation, some reporting around the sidelines that schedule has been orchestrated, especially by the Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, to target President Trump himself, to appease the US president, because he is notorious for having a short attention span at multinational gatherings like this. He left the G7 early, and that had everyone worried that maybe he might leave the NATO Summit early too. So day one's been really scaled back. We have, though, had a lot of emphasis on Israel-Iran. It's kind of overshadowed Ukraine on day one. So we did see the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen trying to refocus the agenda, saying things like in her statement to the media that the future of Europe is written on the front lines of Ukraine. So an unusual start, a slow start, but definitely not a boring day. It's been quite interesting.
Counterpoints host Melinda Nucifora, thank you so much and all the best at the NATO Summit. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines around the world today. The US Supreme Court has granted the Trump administration permission to resume deportations of migrants to countries other than their homeland. The court's order halts a decision from the US district judge, which found that deporting migrants to third-party nations without due process violated the Constitution. The case involves migrants from Myanmar, Mexico, Laos and Vietnam who were sent to southern Sudan. Still on US immigration, in the interest to ramp up mass deportations, Florida has started building a detention facility to temporarily hold illegal immigrants. The facility will cost about $450 million a year to operate off an airstrip in the Everglades. Florida's Attorney General said the detention center could be built in 30 to 60 days and hold an estimated 1,000 people. Now, WhatsApp messaging service has been banned from all US House of Representatives devices. An internal memo deemed WhatsApp a high risk to users due to the lack of transparency in how it does protect user data. In response, Meta disagreed with the move. The House has banned other apps from staff devices in the past, including TikTok. Now, protesters in Venice are celebrating after Amazon founder Jeff Bezos was forced to change his main wedding celebration to another location. It comes after Greenpeace joined the demonstrations to his marriage to Lauren Sanchez. Mayor Luigi Brunogna had defended the Amazon founder's wedding, saying it would boost the local economy. Let's take a look at the top business news now. And Google may have to make changes to its search services in the UK to ensure greater competition. Competition watchdog, the CMA, said it was not accusing Google of anti-competitive practices at this time, but it has set out a roadmap of changes to the company could make to its businesses ahead of a final decision in October. Amazon is ramping up its presence in the UK with a massive £40 billion investment over the next 3 years. The company says the expansion will create thousands of jobs, with fulfillment centres opening in Hull, Northampton and also the East Midlands. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called it a massive vote of confidence in the British economy. Turning to all the sports news now, tennis star Emma Raducanu has praised Wimbledon for ensuring her safety in blocking a man who had been stalking her. The man followed her to WTA events in Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Dubai and Doha. Earlier this week, Dubai police laid a restraining order and banned him from all the tour events. And Manchester United have made an improved bid of over $81 million for the Brentford striker Brian Mbeumo. That follows an earlier offer of $61.2 million. The 25-year-old, who scored 20 goals last season, could become United's second signing after Matheus Cunha. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours' time with W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.